This is my Tailgater Tire Table. I've been getting a lot of questions about this. Now, I did cover this briefly in the kitchen episode of my camper build video series, but I wanted to go into a little more depth about this since I've been getting so many questions about it. Now, in this video, I will talk about sort of my thoughts and impressions after having used this for the last 9 months. Take a closer look at the stove that I've integrated into it here. We'll take a real-time look at how long it truly takes to set it up and to break it down and put it away. And we'll compare using this to simply using a more conventional folding table that takes up about the same amount of space in the truck. Now, along the bottom of the video player, you will find chapter links so you can jump ahead to whichever section interests you. This video is not sponsored in any way. I purchased this. I have no affiliation with the company at all, just sharing my experience with this table. Oh my gosh. Now, just some real quick backstory here. When I built out this cargo door of my camper to become my kitchen, I got my water here, I've got my dry food storage here, pans, utensils, things like that. My original idea here was that I was going to make some kind of a table that would also fit right in this space. So when I'd open this door, I'd pull it out, and part of my idea here was to use the tire as part of the support for the table. I made a number of attempts at it, but ultimately I wasn't able to come up with something that I felt was solid enough as a table, and getting it squeezed into the space was also looking like it was going to pose an issue. So eventually I broke down, I got the Tailgater Tire Table instead, again using the same idea of using that tire as part of the support of the table. Now, had I really thought it through, I could have just simply used a folding table, but we'll talk more about that later. But through the process of developing this, I had become fixated on the idea of using the tire as a support, and when I couldn't get that to work and I was pressed for time for an upcoming trip, I just pulled the trigger on the Tailgater Tire Table instead. So this is not a huge table, about 24 inches that way by about 27 inches that way. But for me by myself doing one-pan dinners, this is plenty of space to do my food prep, and it's even the perfect height for me to sit at in my little folding camp chair that I use. Now, this telescoping portion has a loop of metal that hooks along the back of the tire to secure it, and these little legs that stow flat in the table brace it from the other side. There's also a fold-down additional support here that you can wedge into your wheel or onto the ground for extra support. However, you can use the table without it. This does make the table feel much more solid. I think they offer this in a couple of sizes. This is the standard size. They do also offer it in steel and aluminum. Now, I got the steel version, which is a little less expensive, and I got that because I wasn't sure if in order to integrate my stove here, I might need to do some welding. Ultimately, I was able to just bolt this on. I didn't need to do any welding at all. Had I known that, I would have been happy to spend the extra money on the aluminum version, which weighs considerably less than the steel one. Now, this isn't that hard to move around, but I definitely would have been happier with the lighter weight of the aluminum version. This sets up reasonably quickly, although I do find the setup to be a little bit awkward and cumbersome. The telescoping portion is held into place by these knobs. The knobs stow into threaded receivers on the inside of the table, so the knobs have to be unthreaded from their receivers on the inside and then threaded back into the securing location on the outside. These threads are pretty fine, and so it takes a lot of spins to get them out, a lot of spins to get them all the way in to where they're tightening up on this. Now, these vertical pieces that brace against the front of the tire, they have to be popped out of where they stow on the table, pushing on these little pins, and then they snap into place. These little spring-loaded push buttons are a little difficult to push through, and you're setting up on a cold, wet evening, trying to push those little buttons with your thumb is not super pleasant. It's not the end of the world, but it's probably my least favorite detail about this table. In fact, I use the end of the threaded knob to push them out. Now, overall, the setup and breakdown of this is reasonably quick. Compared to the basic folding table I was using before, it seems more fiddly and awkward and time-consuming, but we'll do a time comparison a little later in the video and see for sure. Ultimately, compared to some other folding camp tables that I've seen that you have to remove pieces from a bag and set up legs and unroll a tabletop, lots of steps. To me, this is definitely no worse than that and very possibly faster than that. Now this burner that I've integrated into the table has worked out reasonably well. My idea was to have my table and stove all be set up as one single step rather than taking out a table, taking out a stove, setting up a stove. Obviously I still have to take my gas bottle, hook it up to the burner, but that would be the case with any other stove anyway. The main disadvantage here is that this is very susceptible to wind. When it's windy, it impacts the flame quite a bit. I did make this little wind block out of some scrap metal, just welded a couple little hinges on there and used adhesive to attach some magnets so I can just place this up underneath there depending on which way the wind is coming from. Stick it up over here. It helps some, but it's not perfect. I may readdress my entire design here, but overall I've liked having the burner integrated into the table. And this is just a cast iron burner. You can find them on Amazon. It came with legs. I simply took the legs off. I cut a hole in the tabletop in order to make a space for the flame to go through, and was able to simply bolt the thing right onto the expanded steel mesh. Now obviously this does limit me to only being able to cook on a single burner at a time. However, what I found when I was carrying my big 2-burner stove is that most of the time I was only using one burner anyway. It was rare that I used both burners. What I found is that after a long day on the trail, I'm actually not super interested in cooking a big elaborate meal, and so I've simply started planning my meals around only having a single burner and whatever way I can make that work. It keeps the cooking simple, it keeps the cleanup simple. Overall, compared to carrying a table plus a big 2-burner stove, I've definitely reduced the amount of space all of this takes in my fairly compact truck. Now when I first shared this setup in my camper build video last year, I had a number of viewers who were wringing their hands over how close my burner was to my gas filler. Now I've been using this for 9 months and I haven't blown up yet. It seems to be okay. I mean, I never smell gas fumes coming out of here, and I feel like I see other people just set up their tables next to their vehicles regardless of where their gas fillers are. If I didn't have this, I may have something else set up here underneath my awning to cook on. I don't know how truly potentially dangerous this is or is not, but so far through hot months and cold months, I have not burnt up yet. That does bring up a little bonus use of this table that I've discovered. Now I carry my extra fuel in 5-gallon jerry cans. These are pretty heavy. Now I've long since given up on using the eco spouts that are required on fuel cans these days, and instead I carry the Safety Siphon. The table is perfect for holding this heavy jerry can while I get the siphon going. That's now flowing right out of the gas can and into my gas tank. Now as this gets lower, I will need to get the bottom of that siphon tube closer to the bottom of the tank, but then this weighs much less. It's easy to pick it up with one hand, manipulate the siphon tube with the other. This makes refueling the truck so comfortable and easy. Needless to say, you don't want to be cooking on the burner when you're doing this. There we go. All right, so let's take a look at how long it takes to set up the tire table, break down the tire table, compared to a typical folding table. This is my old folding table that I used to use with my previous topper. As you can see, it takes up a very similar amount of space as the Tailgater Tire Table. feel like that was probably faster, definitely easier, and quite a bit more working space. Okay, let's see how it compares breaking this one down. All right, I feel like that was probably faster as well. Obviously, that's a pretty quick, easy setup table compared to some other folding camp tables. And that is, it's very basic. It's plastic. It's probably not as durable, and it's not really designed to spend a lot of time outside. I have mixed feelings about the Tailgater Tire Table. It's a bit clunky to set up compared to other folding tables, with some awkward, fiddly components that could be better engineered. It's a smaller work surface than other tables that cost considerably less. It's relatively heavy for a camp table if you don't want to pay a premium for the aluminum version. Even for the steel version, it's a little on the spendy side. On the plus side, though, the table is supported entirely by the wheel, so you can set it up on ground that isn't level or in sandy or muddy conditions where other table legs would sink in. It's very sturdy and stable. Unlike many camp tables, you're not going to knock this over if you bump into it. And no other camp table I've owned could be trusted to support an open 5-gallon container of gasoline. The heavy-duty metal top will stand up to whatever you throw at it, including cutting a hole and embedding a stove burner. I hope you found this useful or helpful in some way. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments below, and thank you for watching.